When I was younger, I went hunting with my father one day. It was a fantastic time. It was just my dad and I, alone in the woods, sitting silently, waiting for any sort of sound of movement. When I first got my target, I killed it. Returning home, my dad was really proud of me. We stripped the animal and we ate the meat. And after dinner, I went to him and I said that I no longer wanted to hunt. He fully supported me, but he asked why. To me, killing that animal wasn't fair or just. The animal had no way of defending itself. It had no way of fighting back. This is my friend. This is Snickle Fritz. There's two parts of Snickle Fritz's story. One of how puppy rescue mission and 250 people that I don't know helped bring her home. How she took a taxi cab from Western Afghanistan to Kabul. And at Kabul, she got into a plane and flew back to America. And after living in the States for a year and a half, then flew to Canberra. That's a fantastic story. It's a Disney movie waiting to happen, and I love it. But it's not her full story. The truth is, Fritz is a bit of a rat bag. She begs incessantly. She sheds tremendously. She doesn't know one single trick. She never comes when she's called, and she barks loudly and obnoxiously at anything that moves past the fence. Fritz hails from a trash pit in Western Afghanistan, and every day, Snickle Fritz accepts that I killed people and that I destroyed families' lives and that I was a monster in a certain part of the world. She knows that, and so do I. I go to bed with it every night. I wake up to it every morning. But I'm not here to tell you a war story. I'm here to tell you a story about one Marine losing his marbles and making his way back to his family. I grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan, in an apple pie existence. As a son of a firefighter and a teacher, as an avid ice hockey player, and a descendant of veterans. I grew up idolizing my grandfather who served in World War II. And I loved playing commandos and watching war movies. And like any Marine worth his salt, my favorite movie is Full Metal Jacket. Growing up, to me, the greatest hero was someone who served their country. It was someone who was willing to put everything on the line in defense of what they believed in. To me, war was the ultimate adventure, and I wondered and hoped that I would ever get the chance. In June of 2001, I joined the Marine Corps. 3 months later, 9/11 happened, and it was then that I knew I had my opportunity. And I returned home, and I asked my dad if he thought that the war was going to last long enough for me to make it through my training. My dad said, "Don't worry, son. I've got a feeling this is going to go on long enough." And as my father is normally right, my life in war began at the age of 18 with the invasion of Iraq and continued until I left 12 years later. My 20s could be documented in a very simple rotation: train, deploy, return home, train, and deploy. This rinse and repeat lifestyle continued until I left, completing 6 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, walking away with a grab bag of medals to pass down to my grandkids, and a mind that comes alive at night and keeps me company during the day. And my life changed when I returned home from my 5th deployment. Our group was set for a mandatory 5-minute assessment from the psychologist. And I went in thinking I was just going to stare at him, talk to him about the weather, and get up and leave. 30 seconds into it, I was crying in anger and frustration. And I returned home to my family, angry, frustrated, explosive, bitter. I developed a slight stutter, and I never wanted to leave the house. But true to the cycle, I was set for another deployment. And in between schools and courses, I made it back into the psych, where he worked hard to get me back to a point where I could deploy again. I deployed again for no other reason than deploying is what takes me back to what I love the most, which is being at war. I loved everything about it: the planning, the discipline, the actions on it, the objective, that feeling you get right before the fight's about to break out. I loved setting the breach, and I loved the adrenaline that ripped through my body as soon as the fight finally happened. But many people ask, why would you continue to go if you mentally broke? It's a very simple answer. At war, I was great. Everything that made me terrible and horrible at home made me fantastic overseas. And I was at a point in my life where I truly believed that the only time I could do anything amazing or awesome was if I was at war. It should also be mentioned that Marines like to fight. It's what we do. And despite being mentally broken, we will deploy as many times as we possibly can, almost like an addict that protects and cares for the same thing that just rips us apart. As the training cycle grew to a close, my family also grew. In addition to my son, my daughter was born, a pregnancy I completely missed, only to slide in at the very last minute, watch the birth, and then after a quick kiss and a hug, I left again soon after. Doing the sea bag drag, it's time for the next phase in the cycle, time to deploy. A few weeks into the deployment, we found Snickle Fritz. She's a tiny, fuzzy little white ball of fur. She had faint little brown specks and she was next to a garbage pit. We picked her up, took her back to the compound. Thankfully, our team chief said that we could keep her. She very quickly became the team dog, running around the compound, making everyone smile and laugh. She became essential to all of our team meetings and our mission briefs, where she assumed her command by curling up in a little ball underneath our team leader's chair and going to sleep. And she finally, eventually grew accustomed to me picking her up and cradling her in my arms like the hairy substitute for the children that I missed. And every morning, I made sure she got her favorite breakfast, which is a plate of bacon, pancakes with syrup, and breakfast burritos. But her favorite time of the day was pre-mission prep. That's because the whole house became alive. All the Marines were out prepping our weapons and our trucks and our gear, getting ready to go. And she'd run from group to group. They'd bend down, scratch her behind the ears, give her a little pat on the belly, and she'd go to the next group, getting as much attention as she could. Around mid-afternoon, we'd bed down for some restless sleep, only to wake well after the sun had set, come back out, put our gear on, load our rucks onto the war wagon, and Fritz would be there with us, still making us laugh, still making us smile. We also had a massive tub of cheeseburgers that the camp cook was nice enough to make for us, and I think that's why she liked her midnight snack. And eventually the time came for us to go on the mission. We'd load the war wagon, the trucks would start, that large metal gate would roll open, and we'd roll out to the awaiting helicopters. Fritz tried as hard as she could to catch up with us and get out, but the gate guard was always fast enough to reach down and grab her and then close the gate. After the gate was closed, she'd go to the middle of the compound, curl up in a little ball, and go to sleep, keeping an eye on both gates, waiting for our return. Eventually, those gates would open once more, and we'd come back, dusty and tired, and Fritz was there to welcome us home. We were normally laughing and joking and carrying on, telling funny stories about the mission that just happened. However, not every mission goes your way, and sometimes we'd come back silent with very serious faces. But Fritz would still be there. She'd run, she'd jump up to us, she'd lick us in the face, would give her a scratch behind the ears, and then would go about her business. It was as if she was saying that no matter what you've done, and no matter what happened, I still accept you. I read a book on my 5th deployment. It's called Love Thy Neighbor, A Story of War. It was written by Peter Maas, and he observed that mankind is capable of the most horrific actions, as long as it is supported both by law and by your peers. This resonated with me, because in my professional life and on deployment, it was my job to kill the enemy. It was both supported by my peers and it was legal. When I was 19, I was on my 2nd deployment. I distinctly remember watching a platoon come back into the camp. They were hooting and hollering, and a young 18-year-old Marine hopped off that vehicle. He ran over to the company gunnery sergeant. He said, "Gunny, I got one." He had a smile on his face from ear to ear. He had his first kill. The pride and satisfaction on him was absolutely blatant. He had done his job. This was normal. It was normal to take lives, and it was normal to lose lives. War was our business, and our business was measured in the profit and loss of humans. But I never hated or disrespected the Taliban and the Fedayeen. Rather, after some reflection, I actually respected them. Because in the end, they were just like me, but they were born in a different nation. And they had the guts to show up to the battlefield and put everything on the line in defense of what they believed in. And every day they gave it their all. My problem wasn't with killing. Killing was easy. It's a part of the job. My problem was that I didn't have a problem killing. My sense of normal was so abnormal that to think about getting out of the Marine Corps was extremely difficult, despite knowing that if I continued, my family would have left me. Even tougher was the thought and the understanding that I knew if I stopped running and stopped deploying, I was going to have to finally face my memories and my family and my thoughts. There was a little voice inside of me, though, that just kept jumping up and down and saying, you don't have to do this, just get out. You don't have to do this. And all those thoughts, they brought on a lot of questions without a lot of answers. Questions like, will my family ever accept me again? Will I ever be normal? Will I ever be able to find something that I'm truly great at? Because in the end, at the end of the day, when war is your job, what the hell do you do next? But thankfully, I listened to that voice. And halfway through my last deployment, I called my wife and I said, I no longer liked who I was becoming, and I was getting out. I knew I was well and truly broken. And I knew that if I didn't leave, my family would have left me. And to be honest, I wouldn't have made it much longer after that anyway. I do want you guys to understand that it would have been so much easier to just keep deploying. War was a very convenient hiding spot, where upon return it brought praise. Had I stayed and continued to deploy, people would have shaken my hand and they'd call me a hero, while my wife would have carried the shame bestowed upon so many military spouses who end up leaving because they have to. The reality is, our families leave because they're the ones that stay at home with us at night when we're angry and frustrated and we can't sleep, and sometimes when we drink. And then they're the same people that stand next to us the next day when we're out in town and our mask is back on. And they watch people walk up to us and call us heroes and shake our hands. It took more balls to not go to war. It took more courage to face my own mind, and it took more bravery to just stay home with my family than to not go to war. We didn't bring Fritz home to save her. We brought Fritz home to save us. She's not my therapy dog. Snickle Fritz was my way of figuring out how to love and care again. Those plates of bacon, breakfast burritos, and pancakes were my way of showing emotion. Fritz was a connection for my family to the parts of my life that they were excluded from. And at days when my family couldn't necessarily love me, they could love Fritz, and I would wake up and try again the next day. Fritz was my first step back to normal. Not done yet. Fritz was my first step back to normal. And through her, my family could accept me again. And with her, I can face my own memories. But Snickle Fritz could have been anything. She could have been anything that touched what was left of me and blew life back into it. Fritz could have been goats or donkeys, monkeys, anything. I just needed something that I could love day in and day out and care for consistently and receive the same unconditional acceptance in return. I had to accept that I might not be traditionally normal anymore. I had to accept that I had done abnormal things, and I had to accept that these things are now a part of who I am. The thing about PTSD is there's no one answer. There's no magical courses or special experiences that will get you back to what you were. I learned to accept that what I had done was not fair and it wasn't just. But I hope that someday it'll help someone, somewhere and somehow. And every day, Snickle Fritz accepts me. She accepts that I killed people, that I destroyed families' lives, and that I was a monster in a different part of the world. And with her, I can also accept this. And for anybody out there who's like me, I want you to know that there are going to be days when it's just going to get too hard and you're going to want to quit. There will be times you'll wake up in the morning and wish that you never had. Because the mountain will look so tall and that road will be so dark. But please know that I'm on that road with you. And that there are thousands of us walking together. And you can always take one more step. And I love you, and I accept you. Thank you.